أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Our dear viewers of MDHILF, the YouTube channel, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the sixth session in the series titled An Exposition of Ashura, where we have been discussing and going into the depths of discussions concerning the events that took place on the 10th of Muharram. We are joined here with us. We have here joined with us Sheikh Anwar Jaffer. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you doing?
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. How are you, Mohammed?
Alhamdulillah, I'm keeping well. I'm looking forward to the discussion planned out tonight.
Inshallah.
As a summary for the viewers of what we discussed last week. Last week we discussed the question of who killed Imam Hussein alayhi salam. For of course there are claims that it was the Shias of Kufa that called Imam Hussein alayhi salam towards Kufa and they themselves killed him. Of course we discussed that this cannot be further than the truth. And we discussed the people of Kufa who are involved in the massacre that took place on the day of Ashura. Today, the session that we have planned out is titled Companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Sheikh, before we delve into the topic of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, are you able to introduce the discussion tonight? And more so, what's the reason that the discussion concerning the companions is so important and useful to the discussion concerning Ashura?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So with regards to the discussion tonight, I've chosen the discussion to speak about the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And the reason why that is because the companions that were there alongside Imam Hussein, every single one of them possessed a particular trait, which is highlighted by the Imam himself, and of course by the enemies of the Imam alayhi salam, and of course some of his closer companions as well. And we'll discuss this in the coming moments. And they were known for this particular trait. Now, it's a very strong akhlaqi trait to have, and it's something that we all should yearn and desire to have this trait in our lives, to live a life with this particular trait. I'm building it up now, right? And obviously, in some of the ziyarats that we recite, we remember the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If it wasn't for the companions of the Imam would have not been able to develop such a movement, which inevitably acts as an archetype for all movements that fight for justice and fight against oppression in the world. So we'll discuss that, inshallah.
Inshallah. So leaving the discussion on the traits for a little while longer, I guess one of the first questions that I'd like to ask you is the question regarding the numbers of companions. Now, the books vary. In some, we've all been accustomed to the number of 72 companions that joined Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Other narrations say 110, and narrations differ as to how many were companions and how many joined Imam on the same day from the opposite side. So, Sheikh, are you able to clarify the position for us and kind of start off with answering exactly how many companions they were martyred in Karbala, if at all, it's possible?
Sure, absolutely. So it's a very interesting question, because when you look at the majority of the authentic narrations that we have, they have an ishara, they signal that there were 72 martyrs on the 10th of Muharram. But then you have other narrations that say that, no, as you mentioned, there are 110, some go into more, some go less. And I think what happens here is that scholars have collated all of the different scenarios that may have acted out on the 10th of Muharram. A scholar by the name of Ayatollah Mohammed Mahdi Shamsuddin does amazing research in this area. And what he does is he says that no, we are able to reconcile all of these differing narrations. And the reconciliation is how you approach the saga of Karbala. From which lens do you examine the event of Karbala? If you're talking about those who died physically alongside Imam Hussein on the 10th of Muharram, then the number is 72. And we have narrations that say that the number of heads that were there on top of the spears when they entered Kufa was 72. Um, Other narrations explain that there were 72 martyrs and so on and so forth. But then when you have other narrations explaining that no, there are 110. So before going into that, so for example, Abi Makhnaf, right? Abu Makhnaf in his Maqtal, he's the first one to write the Maqtal of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, right? He's the earliest source available. And he says that there were 72. There's a narration of Zahaq ibn Abdullah, for example, who was one of the earliest companions of the Imam alayhi salam. So he joined the Imam's camp from the very beginning. And he was there until the very end. Now, what happened was the Imam approaches Zahaq and he said, look, join me in my movement. And obviously you'll be guaranteed paradise and so on and so forth. And Zahaq said, look, I'll join you. There's no issue in me joining you. I'll even fight for you. But if I choose to leave your camp for whatever reason, if I see that there is no benefit in me fighting alongside you or joining your camp, then I will leave. Right? So he makes this shart, he makes this condition. And the Imam accepts. The Imam says to him, okay, fine. You know what? If you want to leave anytime, you have the right to do so, you have the choice, and you go ahead and you leave. So he was there until the day of Ashura, right? And when he saw that the companions were being slaughtered one after the other, he turned around to Imam Hussein and he said, you know what? I'm going to leave. I don't see there being any benefit in me staying and giving my life for you. And the Imam said to him, look, you're free to go. You know, you made that choice. You actually made that a condition before joining my camp, and I agreed to it. If you want to go, you leave and you go. And he said in his narrations, he said that there were 72 people on the day of on the 10th of Muharram, 30 from the Bani Hashim, 42 from the Ashab of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now, when you bring in the other narrations that speak about 110, 120, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, they take into consideration all of the companions that did not die on the day of Ashura, right? So there are narrations that explain that 11 died before Ashura. You're looking at Han ibn Urwa, for example, Muslim ibn Aqil, and some of the close compatriots of the Imam alayhi salam. 8 who were injured on the day of Ashura, but did not die on the day of Ashura, but died because of their wounds later on. Some died in Kufa during the sermon of Ibn Ziyad, when they saw the ladies entering the streets of Kufa, and of course the sermon that was exchanged between the Ahl al-Bayt and Ibn Ziyad. There were those who opposed Ibn Ziyad. When they opposed, they stood up, they were killed. And then there were those in Kufa that when they heard about the Imam's killing, they opposed publicly again, and they were killed. So you're able to reconcile all of these narrations. So 72 died on the day of Ashura, but then the others died, before, after, those who are indirectly connected with the whole movement of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Okay, Ahsan for clarifying that. So another question, Sheikh, that comes to mind concerning the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is their status and their excellences. Now, the companions that partook and joined the Holy Prophet in the battle of Badr, no doubt have a very high status themselves.
Right.
And there has been a somewhat of a discussion amongst the scholars and amongst the ulama regarding the status and the positions that the companions of the Battle of Badr hold and the companions of the Battle of Karbala hold. And what's the reason that it is the companions that partook and participated in the Battle of Karbala, helping Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that they've been given greater merit and greater importance than any other companions in that regard?
So it's a very interesting question, because when you approach the Quran, when you look at the Quranic verses, the Quran is explicit when it comes to the excellences of the people of Badr. It was the first battle of Islam. The Muslims were ill-equipped. They had tawakkul, they had the bravery to stand against the opposition, and Allah praises them. Not only that, but Allah supports them as well through the angels and so on and so forth that we all know of. Now, there are many similarities between what we see in Badr and what we see in Karbala. There is this heavy filtration process that takes place. Now, this is one of the similarities between the two battles. So, when you look at the Battle of Badr, for example, the filtration process is that, the Prophet has been propagating Islam for over 10 years now, and a handful of people came towards the religion of Islam. The majority of them were slaves, the majority of them from the lower classes of society, but nonetheless, they are driven out of Mecca, they go into Medina. Medina embraces the Prophet, they come towards Islam, and the numbers rise naturally and significantly, right? So the Meccans see this as a threat. So out of the 11 or 12 years that the Prophet has been propagating the message of Islam, only a few of them were there present in the Battle of Badr. Literally 313 were there out of the potential hundreds, even perhaps thousands of Muslims that were there at that time. So the filtration process, it was there at the time of Badr, but then it was also there at the time of Karbala, more so in Karbala, because in Karbala, as we said, there were 72 martyrs, right? Shuhada. Out of the entire empire of Islam, the Ummah of Islam, only 72. You're looking at an empire which is, it's a superpower in itself, isn't it? You had potentially millions of Muslims at that time, but only 72 were there alongside Imam Hussein alayhi salam. From all the Muslims that
So
were
those Muslims that believe in the grandfather of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
exactly. So all of the Muslims that were there in Kufa, Sham, Basra, Mecca, Medina, Yemen, Misr, Egypt, and all of these places, only 72 were there alongside the Imam alayhi salam. Right? So the filtration process is significant, very, very significant. So when you examine history, for example, when Imam Hussein leaves the city of Medina, and he proceeds towards the city of Mecca for Hajj, they say there were 82 companions that were there with him. When he gets into Mecca, he delivers certain sermons, entices the people. The people want to join the Imam alayhi salam. When he leaves Mecca to go towards Kufa, now he has potentially hundreds of companions with him, right? And all of them are geared to fight against Yazid ibn Muawiyah and to topple his government. Now, imagine the people initially joined the Imam with the reason or with the sole purpose to depose Yazid ibn Muawiyah, right? To
Yeah.
break down his government, to help the Imam establish his government. And they knew for a fact that if the Imam was successful in doing so, then they would have a seat in the government. They will have certain merits that the Imam will be very appreciative of. But when they reach Kufa, or they don't even reach Kufa, when they're intercepted by Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyah, they're now taken towards Karbala. When the news reaches them that, no, hold on a second, Han ibn Urwa, Muslim, the Aqil have just been executed, then they said, okay, you know what? There's no support coming in from Kufa. We relied on the support coming in from Kufa, but now because we know that there is no support from the people of Kufa, this isn't going to go anywhere. We're going to be killed. So they all began abandoning the movement of Imam Hussein, right? So initially, the Imam had hundreds, thousands of people supporting him, but then they all left until that number depleted to only 72. So that filtration process is very, very significant, especially when it comes to the similarities between the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Karbala. But in the sermon of the Imam makes it very clear. The night of Ashura, yeah, he says, "Amma ba'd, inni la a'lamu ashaban awfa wa la khayra min ashabi." He says, "I do not know companions. I have not seen companions who are greater, who are better, who are more motivated, who are more loyal than my companions. ولا أهل بيتي أبر ولا أوصل من أهل بيتي." He says, I have not seen, the people of my family who are more obedient and more committed to family ties, to Salat al-Rahim than my own family. فَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ جَمِيعًا عَنِّي خَيْرًا. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your, encouragement.
Yeah. And this is the place where Hazrat Abbas, for example, would make his declaration on behalf of the family of Imam Ali alayhi salam. as do you wish for us to stay alive while you're no longer there? Or the sons of
Yeah,
Muslim bin Aqil, that the Imam had said that Muslim has sacrificed his life, but they all stood by him. And again, Zuhair bin Qayn, who poetically said that may my life be sacrificed for you over 1,000 times, and I'd still help.
absolutely, absolutely. So these are wonderful words that came from the companions, right? That unconditional support for the Imam alayhi salam. And the Imam was very, very clear in telling them. And he said to them, look, tomorrow is the day that you will give your life. You know, you will die. They will take your lives from you, right? You will be assassinated. And they were happy with that. They were happy with that choice. Now, when you compare the, this is how scholars approach the whole discussion. You say when you compare the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Karbala, there are significant differences. One of the differences is that you have to understand the people of Badr. No offense. May Allah, reward those who deserve to be rewarded. They were simple-minded, right? They were new to Islam. They didn't know anything about the intricacies and the intimacies of the religion of Islam, the Sharia, for example. The Sharia was relatively new at that time. The power of the Prophet, his position, the power of the Quran, or even the whole concept of Imam. They knew nothing about this. For them, Islam was still relatively a new religion. And when you compare the companions of Badr to the companions of Karbala, it's like comparing a child to a man of good age, right? A child will still show loyalty, right? For those of you who have children, your sons and your daughters will show loyalty towards you. And those were the people of Badr. Whereas the people of Karbala, they had the choice. They understood what was coming towards them. They made an active decision to stand and to fight. Now, that's not to bring down the position of the people of Badr in any way whatsoever, no. But it's just to explain that there is a vast spiritual difference between the people of Badr and the people of Karbala, right? Um, as I mentioned, the Imam made it very clear to them that they will be killed, that they will be executed. The people of Badr, being killed was not an element of certainty, right? For them, they had to fight the enemies, the mushrikeen, but they didn't. They had tawakkul on God, and they had, the the aspirations of being victors of that battle. Whereas Imam Hussein told him, his companions before the 10th of Muharram, he said, look, we're not going to physically win this fight. We're all going to be killed. So that certainty of death was there amongst the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And yet they went ahead and they still fought for him. And they fought for him as if they were going to, be the victors of that particular battle. But, so when you compare the companions of the two, there's such a vast difference between them. And that's something that we really need to understand. In Badr, death wasn't certain. In Karbala, death was most definitely certain. And they chose death over anything else. Now, even, as I mentioned, as the Quran, it praises and it praises the people of Badr, rightly so, because of the selfless act that they did, which was to fight for the sake of Islam. What's important is that, when you look at the struggle, fighting in the way of God, jihad in itself, jihad al-asghar, um, jihad al-asghar is such that when you enter the battlefield, you don't know you're going to die or not. If you die, فَبِهَا وَنِعْمَةً, Allah rewards you, Allah takes you towards the kingdom of heaven. If you don't die, now you have a bigger struggle, which is to maintain that level of faith, right? And we see this in history. After the Battle of Badr, you had the Battle of Uhud. Why did the Battle of Uhud fail? It is because the intention and the sincerity of the people were different, right? And that kind of allowed the whole battle to disintegrate, and the Muslims lost because of the actions of majority of the Muslims that were there fighting in Uhud. Um, Sincerity, having ikhlas and niyyah, having the motivation to just support the message of Islam and to fight and give your life for the message of Islam is very, very difficult. That struggle is very, very difficult. Those who fought in the Battle of Badr showed a deplete in that particular area in the coming battles. Some of the actors in the Battle of Badr were known to be, the actions were very, very much questionable, even especially after the death of the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So just because the Quran, for example, praises them doesn't mean that they are granted Jannah. No, they had a greater struggle, which was to maintain that level of faith, which many of them didn't. Many of them depleted in their faith. But the people of Karbala, it's as if they trained themselves. They enhanced their faith to a level where they submitted, they unconditionally supported the Imam, even when they knew that it was going to take them to their own death.
So focusing on that point that you made, that they were certain that they were going to face death, which is something that wasn't present in the people of Badr. So of course the Quran does praise, like you said, the people of Badr, but it's the people of Karbala that scholars have put on a position where we say that they have a higher position. Now, what are the sort of traits that you would say, or maybe the kind of winning trait, or if you were to kind of put all of the traits into one, what is it you would say that separates out the companions of Karbala to any other companion?
So the primary trait, this is something which is expounded by the ulama, is the trait of basirah. How the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam had this level of foresightedness that really struck out. So they say that one of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, on the day of Ashura, when he was fighting, he shouted towards the enemies, and he said this. He said, "Waylakum, waylakum ya humaqa, mahlan atadrun liman tuqatilun." Do you know who you're fighting? Right? إنما تقاتلون فرسان المصر. You're fighting the bravest of warriors, وأهل البصائر, and you are fighting the people who are from those who have basira, those who have foresightedness in their religion. And that's significant. That's a very, very powerful statement that this person is making. That this person is saying that these companions of Imam Hussein, they have some sort of an insight to the religion of Islam that none of you have. And it is for this reason that they're very much willing to give their lives for the sake of Islam. Right? Now, when you look at, for example, this concept of basira literally it allows the person to make the right choices in life, especially when circumstances, when things become very difficult. Basira steps in and allows us to make the right decisions. Last week we spoke about in our podcast the whole methods of making right decisions, right? We said that one of the methods of making right decisions is consultation, right? So the people of Basair, they are those who make the right decisions when circumstances become very, very difficult for them. Imam Hussein alayhi salam alludes to this in one of his sermons. On the day of Ashura, he turns to his enemies and he says, Ya ayyuhan nas, isma'u qawli, wa la ta'ajalu. Says, listen to my words, do not hasten. Hastening is a person who makes a decision without actually thinking through, the pros and the cons, without thinking through for example, the consequences, and so on and so forth. This is very much looked down upon, not just within the religion of Islam, but even outside the religion of Islam. This is very, very much looked down upon. And interestingly, the Imam says, do not make your decisions hastily. Think about what you're doing. And the Imam simultaneously in his many sermons, he begins to examine, he begins to identify himself, that I am the son of Rasulullah, I am the grandson of Rasulullah, I am the son of Fatimah al-Zahra. You look towards the east, towards the left, you will not find a single person like me at this moment in time. What you're doing is you're now making a choice, you're now making a decision which is you'll be very much regrettable by this decision. And it's a powerful concept that the Imam alludes to. So the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam were from Ahl al-Basair. They had basira, and that's something that we should all yearn to seek in our lives as well, inshallah.
Inshallah. So, given this basira is something that they had this level of insight, as well as foresightedness, and perhaps this may be going towards the end of our session. So maybe our last question is, what are the different types of insightedness, or what are the different types of basira that we can strive to aim towards?
So basira in itself, it's a very deep discussion, very akhlaqi, very ethical discussion, and it's something that's often discussed by the urafa. And
Mm,
to be amongst the Ahl al-Basar literally means that you have a vision, you have an insight to make the right decisions. You're able to differentiate between what is right and wrong. Now, interestingly, as a Muslim, right, you ask any Muslim, the tenets of your faith. He'll say, tenets of my faith is that I believe in Tawheed, I believe in Nabuwah, I believe in that, Salah is wajib, I believe in the recitation of the Quran. So this is not you understanding what is true and what is false, right? Knowing Salah is wajib is knowing the truth, but it's not a differentiating action, right? Knowing that recitation of the Quran is good, it's true, but it's not a differentiation of making right decisions in your life. Interestingly, there's a very interesting narration of Ibn Abbas. One day he comes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and he says, you know, I was traveling and I saw a group of people in a community, their hands and their knees and their foreheads, they were full of calluses because of the amount of ibadat that they were engaging in, right? Their faces had become so dry because of the amount of fasting that they would engage in. They wore simple clothing, their tongues were busy in the recitation of the Holy Quran. And then he said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said, how can these people not be of Ahl al-Basair? So Ibn Abbas realized that, just merely worshipping is not a
mm,
trait that allows you to have basira, right? Even the Khawarij, for example, the Khawarij, they used to pray, they used to fast, they used to recite Quran, they used to go for Hajj, right? And yet at the same time, the Imam had to make sure that he was buried in the secrecy of the night because he knew that if the Khawarij knew where his location was, his burial location, they would dig him up, right? They would exhume his body and violate the holy body. So even, to be amongst the people of Basira is not something as simple as just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you get it. There's a whole akhlaqi trait behind it. It's the reformation of the self. It's a refining of the soul that makes a person have basira. So amongst the riwayat that we have, right, that one of the you look, for example, towards the Holy Quran. وَاذْكُرُ عِبَادُنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَأُولِي الْأَيْدِي وَالْأَبْصَارِ. That, Ibrahim and Yaqub and Ishaq, they were considered to be amongst the people of Al-Absar, the people who had Basira. So this is a quality that was there amongst the infallibles. And it's something that we can definitely establish within our lives. So amongst the riwayats, for example, we have a very famous narration, "Man sami'a wa tafakkara." It says one of the qualities of having basira is that when a person listens, he thinks, right? Again, it goes back to the whole concept of not making hasten decisions. He thinks, he weighs the pros and cons before he speaks or before he makes a decision. وَمَنْ نَظَرَ وَنَظَرَ وَأَبْصَرَ. And when he looks very with precision, right? He examines something greatly. He doesn't just look from the surface of it and from a very superficial perspective. No, when he looks towards something, he examines it from all dimensions. وَانْتَفَعَ بِالْبِرِّ وَالْانْتَفَعَ بِالْإِبْرِ. And he benefits from what has passed. Literally, what this means is that he ponders over history, because history has a natural tendency to repeat itself, right? So he looks into the dimensions of what has happened before. He examines it from a very meticulous way, and then he tries to predict the future based on what has happened before. So, in this day and age, a person will sit down and he will examine, for example, what has happened in the time of the Holy Prophet, what happened after his demise, what happened in Saqifa, what happened to the hukumat that was there in the hands of Imam, that was then taken away from him, who did it go into, whose hands did
mm.
it go in, what happened in their time, when it came back to the Imam, what happened. So all of these are vital lessons that we should explore, we should understand, and it allows us to appreciate how Karbala took place and why it took place, right? So in a different narration, for example, I'll end very, very shortly. In a different narration, the Imam alayhi salam explains, he says, the most absar, the most person who has basira is the person who realizes his deficiencies, right? He realizes that he is a person who is full of faults and deficiencies. And, he tries to progress at whatever capacity. But the fact is that he realizes that he is a deficient person, and he does not project that onto others. Meaning that he doesn't pick out the deficiencies and the shortcomings of other people. Unfortunately, in many communities, we have people who do this, right? They engage in trying to pick out the shortcomings of other people without actually realizing that they are too full of shortcomings and traits and deficiencies. Um, in a different narration, very similar to this one, the infallible explains, the one who exposes the deficiencies of others, something will happen to them where they will uncover their own deficiencies to the public as well. What goes around always comes around, and this is very
Mm.
much Islamic principle. If you start pointing fingers to others, one day all fingers will be pointing towards you, right? So when you compare that to the people of Karbala, when you compare that to the ashab of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, their vision was very, very clear. They made a very calculated decision, and that was that they are willing to give their lives. They are willing to embrace death for something much bigger, to be a role model for all movements of justice in the world, not just to gain heaven. Heaven for them is just a byproduct, right? For them, what was more important was to represent justice, to represent the oppressed in this world. So when you look at the children of Karbala, Qasim and Own Muhammad, Ali al-Akbar, when you look at, for example, Abdullah, the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Ali al-Asghar, right? They made very, very calculated decisions, which was that they are very much willing to embrace death. They're not going into battle to collect the war booty or to, for example, become rich by it, which many people did at the time of the Holy Prophet, right? They
Mm.
forget the Holy Prophet. Look at the time of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, right? You look at the companions who were fighting alongside Umar ibn Sa'ad. When you read the Maqtal of Habib ibn Madahir, for example, two people were involved in the killing of Habib ibn Madahir. They say that when they helped one another, they literally helped one another bring down Habib. And when Habib ibn Madahir was killed, later on they were fighting with each other, saying that, okay, you know what, give me the opportunity to present the head to Ibn Ziyad so I can get the benefits from him, so I can obviously be rewarded by him. So you could see that the people that were there fighting against Imam Hussein alayhi salam, their motivation was, we need to be rewarded. We're going to do this because of fame. We're going to do this because of, for example, to collect the war booty and become rich by it. When the head of Borer, for example, there was one man in particular, he took the head of Borer to his own home to look after it, so that he is known to be the person who kind of, looked after the head of Borer so that it was taken to the courts of Ibn Ziyad. And obviously his wife found out, and obviously his wife and his sister found out, and they vowed to never speak with him, because Borer used to be one of the teachers of the Quran in Kufa. He used to be a scholar in the city of Kufa, who used to be a scholar, a teacher of many of the people in Kufa. And because of what happened, they obviously cut connections with this person altogether. So you can see that the point is that you can see that the motivation for the ashab of Umar ibn Sa'd was the world. It was dunya. Umar ibn Sa'd himself,
Yeah.
his motivation right against Imam Hussein was the world. Whereas the companions of Imam Hussein, no, their motivation was much, much bigger than that, right?
Mm.
And all of that stems from having basira.
Yeah. So I think you've just touched upon a slight nuance, which is different to what knowledge is, and Basira having that insight is different to the knowledge, because the enemies of Imam Hussein all recognized who he was. Umar Saad himself asked Ubaidullah bin Ziyad a time so that he can kind of mull over the decision, where he himself states that I see myself being between heaven and hell. And obviously, we all know where he went with the decision. And
Absolutely.
it's supposed to say that knowledge is different to having insight and having that level of critical thinking as well. inwards and outwards.
Ahsant. Yeah, absolutely. It's not even that, right? The companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as I mentioned, there was a heavy filtration process that took place for them to be there at that particular time. They were there in the right time, in the right place. And many of these companions, when you read the Maqtal, for example, the different Maqatil, it explains to us that many of these companions, they joined the Imam's camp last minute.
Yeah.
Hur ibn Yazid was just one of them, but he wasn't the only one who joined the Imam's camp. It was a whole team, a whole number of combatants that actually joined Hur ibn Yazid. They saw the truth and they accepted it. One of the aspects of one of the dimensions of being able to gain basira is that you see the truth, you understand the truth, you examine it, and you submit to it. You accept it and then you submit to it, right? So basira is not just about the akhlaqi perspective where you try and focus on yourself, you refine yourself from a moral perspective. I have deficiencies, let me focus on my deficiencies.
Mm.
Basira goes beyond that. Basira in religion, basira to dini, as they say, the ulama, is that you're able to understand the truth. You look into the world today, right? There are many religions out there. And within these religions, you have many different interpretations, you have many disciplines, you have many denominations. And each and every single one of them are very active in tabligh, in propagation of what they believe in. And they have been active for decades, right?
Yeah.
Um, Basira in deen is when a person is able to understand the truth, he is able to recognize it, and beyond that, he submits to it. That is the true meaning of basira, that they're able to distinguish between right and wrong. You look at, for example, the history of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, right? Muawiyah, for example, for many years, he was using the media to brainwash his entire ummah. Right? The people of Sham were literally brainwashed by the
Mm.
movements of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. The famous story when one of the Shamis approaches Imam Hassan alayhi salam and starts
Yeah.
abusing using foul language, and the Imam responds to him in kindness. He says to him, "Come to my house if you don't have a place to stay. Come eat in my house if you are hungry. Come rest in my house if you have no place for shelter." And the man was shocked to see such akhlaq coming from the Imam, right? Because in the back of his mind, the assumption was that the Ahl al-Bayt are far away from the camp of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa right? This was the media that was being
Yeah.
propagated by Imam Ali, by Muawiyah in this area. But then you realize that despite this, despite the number of the cloud of ambiguity that was there, they were able to filter through it. They were able to see the truth. Not only did they see it, but they held on to it. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, for example, he had no intentions to be with the Imam alayhi
Mm.
salam. He had absolutely no intentions. But then the Imam shares a few words with him. They say Zuhair ibn al-Qayn was an Uthmani, right? He used to support Uthman ibn Affan. He was a staunch supporter of Uthman ibn Affan. But then the Imam sits down with him, he shares a few words with him, and then Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, in his final statements, he says, even if I was to be cut in 1,000 pieces over and over again, I'll very much be willing to do that. So
Mm.
that's basira. You're able to see the truth, you're able to submit to it and accept it wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So on that note, we'll move towards concluding our session tonight. Today, in the exposition of Ashura, we've discussed the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and started the discussion with, of course, regarding the numbers and how they're awarded a better and a higher position than the companions of Badr. And of course, right now, we've just been discussing about their trait, which is Basira. Sheikh, before we complete and conclude, are there any concluding remarks that you would like to part with?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the ziyarah that we recite, we say, Ya laytana kunna ma'ak, we wish we were there with you. It's not as easy as it sounds. Imagine if you were to live at the time of the Imam, would we be supporting it, despite the
Yeah.
amount propaganda that was being thrown at that time? Would we really be standing alongside the Imam alayhi salam? And it goes back to what we say in Surah Al-Fatiha, right? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. It's the best dua that we can recite in these times as well. Allow us to develop ourselves, Ya Allah, accept our a'mal, show us the truth, and allow us to accept the truth when we see it.
Yeah. Definitely. And with the declaration that we make, even in Ziyarat Ashura, Ya laytani kuntu ma'akum fa'afuza fawzan azima. It's a declaration that we potentially can repeat with the Hussein of our time, because the Imam is alive, Imam al-Mahdi, and he is in need. Not that he is in need, but we are able to support him. Very beautiful point. And with having said that, we will conclude tonight's session, inshallah. Thank you so much, Sheikh. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept whatever little that we had to offer. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to also alleviate any difficulties that is being caused by the current global pandemic that's happening, be it emotionally, financially, or mentally or otherwise. And finally, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of the Hussein of our time, Imam al-Mahdi, ajrallahu ta'ala faraja, and when he does so, that we are also part of his companions, inshallah.
Inshallah. Ahsantum. Jazakumullah.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. Jazakallah.
Take care, inshallah.